welcome to another episode of One More Thing with Pastor Eric. And we recently just wrapped up a whole series on Love Never Fails. But Pastor Eric has some things that he didn't quite get to touch on, and he shared a little bit with me about it, and I think it's really kind of neat, kind of looking at it from this angle.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about what love is and things like that, but...
Yeah, so the last message of the series, we talked about love always. So there's these four things that love always is, and you can't have one without the other. They have to be consistent. So if you think you're just protecting somebody, you can think, well, I'm showing love. Well, no, it has to encompass all four at the same time. And if you lack any of them, then it really doesn't, it really can kind of do the opposite. Kind of like, let's start with this one. So if love only protects, but lacks trust, hope, and perseverance, this is what could happen to somebody. They become overprotective, right? If they're just protection mode and that's all they do, that's all they think love is just protecting, then you can't use that as an excuse as a parent or a leader, because overprotection is not healthy either. So overprotecting can cause harm. So if you're just in a protection mode and that lack the other three, then you're missing the boat. And then also it causes controlling relationships. You know, a mom may be overprotective, or a father or a leader may be overprotective. And so you need to have protection, but you can't just protect all the time. You got to have these others. And then it can be fear driven. You know, you're constantly worried about, oh, what's the scenario that plays out if this is, if this happens. So I have a few examples, but I really think it would be good for us to think about that. Like the biggest thing I wanted to get across in my message this past Sunday was that idea that you can't just do one of them, because if it says always, you got to do your best to be consistent in all four areas.
It's always in every one of those.
Every one of those. So some examples of this: only protecting. A parent refuses to let their child try new things. A spouse or a friend constantly shields someone from consequences, but never trusts them to grow or learn. So that's kind of some of the examples of what it would be like to just be in protection mode, and that's all you focus on. So should we move to the next one?
Yeah.
So the next one here is trust. So if you only trust, but you leave out the other three, and again, that would be protection, hope, and perseverance, then the person can be very naive. Just because, again, going back to the same concept, if you just trust and you think that's all you need to do to show love, then you're kind of walking in being naive. You're not going to be open to really equipping, training. You can't just trust and blindly and just say, oh, they've got it.
Yeah. You
got to walk with them along the path. There is that protection area where you need to be protecting them too. Ignore warning signs. It's like you're not going to worry about any dangers or any scenarios. You just, I'm just trusting. It's like I heard a crazy story of somebody, like a mom closing her eyes and saying, "Lord, look, kids, I'm trusting the Lord," and ends up hitting a telephone pole. It's just those type of things. Like, you can't ignore warning signs, and then trusting too much in others without protecting boundaries. So people can overstep their boundaries, and then that's not love either. Love, again, has to accompany all the. Some example of this might be a business owner trust employees without accountability, leading to theft or failure. Another one is a friend who repeatedly trusts someone who manipulates or betrays them. So again, love is a combination of all these things. And so you have to always be thinking about that aspect. I need to trust, but I also have to protect. Mm-hmm. So there's that idea of protect, trust, and then we talk about hope. And so as we talk about hope and then we miss out on the other things, that leads to wishful thinking. If you just have hope, you're
dreaming all the time. You're just always going out there without having any of that tangible other things.
Exactly. And you can be a dreamer, and it's not going to really make an impact. And unrealistic optimism. So it's like, and I was thinking about this, that as I was thinking over this, that one of the things that the couples have a big danger in when they get married is they have unrealistic expectations of their marriage. They think that everything's going to work out. Well, everything will change once we get married. These issues I have with this person. So they have this tremendous hope. Good.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think it back to the Preparing Rich, the marriage, premarital counseling that we do and that I've gone through. And there is those, sections you work through to where I want you guys to write down what are you really going to, like what chores are going to be yours? What's going to be, this, and that way at least gets you, you can write some things down then and it change later, but it's just about getting that mindset, thinking that through and not just having that hope of, we'll figure it out or it'll balance out on its. No, you gotta really think about it and be intentional about that.
A lot of times, again, we need to have hope in our relationships. We need to believe in people, but you shouldn't have such a belief that you don't have the other aspects. That there's that aspect of trust, protection. And so all that leads to love, and really what love should be about, because if you take one of those words and just run with it. Another thing is hopes for the best. They just constantly hope for the best. Well, maybe it'll work out, and without really taking action to protect it or to trust. So it's not taking the steps that are needed. It's just having that hope. Again, these words represent good things, but if they're just focused singularly to that point, it can lead to a bad thing because you're doing it in the opposite direction there. Some examples of this: a parent who hopes their child will succeed but never teaches or disciplines them. He'll turn out good eventually. No, you got to kind of discipline. A leader who hopes the situation improves but refuses to take steps to help. It's just like, I wish this person would stop doing this annoying thing or stop acting that way. But they don't take as a leader to say, hey, I need to probably address it.
I get this sense it's also like almost like a denial thing. Like, you know what I mean? You just keep hoping for the best, but you're denying the reality of, I feel like that kind of
absolutely. That's very true. If you just hope all the time and that's all you do, then you can get caught up in that thinking it will work itself out, and it's not. So the last one here, if love only perseveres, but again lacks protection, trust, and hope, this is kind of what happens. You become stubborn. You endure to the end and refuse to let go. Staying in harmful relationships because you're afraid to quit. And you'd rather die to the death than give up, and that's not a good thing if you're just focused on perseverance, that's not healthy either. A person who keeps pushing forward without using wisdom or thinking about the boundaries that need to be set up. And so some examples of this would be a person who stays in an abusive relationship thinking that love means never giving up. A worker who keeps enduring unfair treatment but never trusts that change is possible. So again, the whole idea of this concept was just thinking about, Paul, with his wording and everything, he does such a good job of making sure he knows why they use certain words. And the fact that he chooses to use each one of those words and says always, it always protects, it always hopes, it always trusts, it always perseveres. Those have to work in tandem. It's kind of like, we've talked about the ideal team player. You got to have humble, hungry, and smart, right? And those have to really work together to be a good teammate. And so I think that's the same way that Paul's trying to communicate with us, that love needs to have all four of these things, and it has to be consistent. And so that's the challenge. If we really love people, if we really want to make a difference in people's lives, yes, we've got to trust, we've got to hope, but we also have to protect. There's certain things in that relationship you're like, I've got to protect this. And I mean, like as a parent, it's sometimes discipline, it's sometimes teaching hard lessons to our kids, and then it's persevering. It's not giving up, but all those need to come together. Yeah,
it just like with anything else in life and your relationship with God, for some people, some of those come easier than others. And that's why, you have to be mindful of them to know which one of those areas I'm not so good at, that I need to be intentional about making sure I have. Otherwise, I'm going to lack it, and it's not going to.
And I didn't want to go that far with it,
Yeah.
but to your point, you could even maybe have like 2 that are kind of easier for you, and you leave out 2 other ones. And I don't know what the breakdown of that could be. We could dive deeper into that, but I think that that it's so easy to get caught up in one aspect and think, well, I'm really loving my friend or my spouse, because I'm trusting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, is that also, are you protecting? Are you persevering? Are you having that hope, and not just focused on the trust aspect? Yeah. So that's really what I wanted to encourage everybody and just kind of take with them out of that series, was just thinking about how that might be, that if, like you said, you might be good at one of those, but that doesn't mean you should stay focused on that. Like, stretch your love and make sure your love is embodying all 4, and that because that's the kind of love we get from God. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, to me, that's the amazing part, is that we look at God's example, we look at Jesus, and we see all this play out all the time. Like, he never gives up on me, but yet he still trusts me and has hope for me. But he also protects me, and that protection can come.
Yeah, why in the world would he ask us to love, but it have a different definition than his love? Like, you know what I mean? If he's always those things, which he is, we may go through our life feeling like, oh, he's not protecting us. Yeah. Oh, he doesn't. You know what I mean? But that's us. That's based upon our
You're
relationship.
Right, because that may play out in somebody's life where even a spouse or maybe a child may not understand your full love, but all those things, because you deeply love them, are being played out even if somebody else doesn't recognize them.
Yeah. So I just think if God is always those things, and we are supposed to love like he is, and he shows us what that love is, and we can't just only have partial of it. I mean, he's going to want us to have that full, complete thing. So, no, that is really good. It's a good little extra bonus coming off of this series of Love Never Fails. So, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of One More Thing, and hopefully it encourages, hopefully it motivates you, and we look forward to the upcoming series we got planned. So, take care.